The following podcast is brought to you by PeacemakerNetwork.com. PeacemakerNetwork.com. Audio is provided by Pixabay.com. That's Pixabay.com.
In the Karen Read murder trial, a bombshell witness. Hey, we're going to talk about that and a whole lot more on this episode of Charlie Crime Buster. It's what some people are calling the fastest minutes in podcasting.
The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the individuals participating and do not represent those of a city, county, state, or federal law enforcement agencies nor sponsors and platforms of this presentation. The Charlie Crime Buster name and all forms and abbreviations are the property of its owner, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service. All individuals described or mentioned in the presentation should be considered innocent unless or until found guilty in a court of law. This presentation contains subject matter. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
Well, hello and welcome to another Charlie Crime Buster podcast. We're talking about the Karen Read Retrial, week number 7. Going to get you all caught up about that and talk to you about that bombshell witness. But first, let me take a moment to welcome you to the program. If you're a first-time listener or a seasoned listener, you are welcome to be a part of the Charlie Crime Train. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to invite you to reach out with a shout-out. You'll reach me, CharlieCrimeBuster, at gmail.com, CharlieCrimeBuster@gmail.com. Tell us what you think about the program. Make suggestions on other episodes you'd like for us to cover, and even lodge objections. You can disagree. It is a safe zone. Love to hear from you. CharlieCrimeBuster@gmail.com. Appreciate you that have been communicating. Also, would like to take a moment to invite you to check out our sponsor, PeacemakerNetwork.com. There you're going to read about the brave men and women who run toward danger instead of away from danger, the peacemakers. You can become a part of the program by becoming a badge, B-A-D-G-E supporter. Almost forgot how to spell there. Badge, B-A-D-G-E supporter, by just clicking there on the link and joining up with us. That's PeacemakerNetwork.com. If you'd like to get caught up on the other episodes, and we have 300 plus out there, I invite you to go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Charlie Crime Buster. You'll see them there. Or you can go to our website, CharlieCrimeBuster.com. We're going to make all this really easy for you. We have links in our show notes. You just click, and you're going to be right there. All right. Welcome aboard the Charlie Crime Train today. Got a lot to cover. Yep, we're talking about Week 7 of the Karen Read murder retrial. This week, well, by many, it's been called the Battle of the Experts. But we're not only going to tell you about the Battle of the Experts. I want to share with you today news about a bombshell witness. One who testified this week, and one that was not expected to say what they said. Now, most talking heads, they're saying that this trial will be won or lost by the Battle of the Experts. But hey, yours truly, Charlie Crime Buster here. Well, you Charlie Crime Buster, I disagree with that. I think, my friend, it would be won or lost about what the jury thinks about the experts. You see, the important ones here are the men and women of the jury. They're going to be the ones who ultimately decide the fate of Karen Read. Not the experts, but the jury. And so it's very important how these experts come across to the jury. You know, another interesting thing about these experts, particularly about the accident reconstructionists, and those are the mostly from two companies, Aperture and Arca. Well, this week in court, it came out how much money was being paid to these companies. Can you guess? Well, the prosecution, by the way, whose money comes from the taxpayers, they're paying Aperture approximately, according to records, $400,000. While the defense, they're paying Arca approximately $50,000. Well, that's quite a bit of difference, isn't it? 400,000 versus 50,000. Well, my friend, I believe I found this week that the defense, well, they got a far better bang for their buck than the prosecution did, I believe. I'll let you be the judge of that, though. So to get you in flow of the trial, let's start by telling you about the flow of witnesses for the past week, week 7. On Monday this past week, we learned that the judge ruled in favor of the defense. Now, that's not something that happens all the time that much. But she did say she would allow the jury to hear from a witness that would be used to introduce those terrible text messages that was sent by the lead investigator, Proctor. Remember last week we talked about the Proctor factor? You see, one of those on the text chain was a guy by the name of Jonathan Demanis. And those messages were to be shown to show that Proctor was biased toward Read at the beginning of the investigation. By the way, Michael Proctor, was fired last March following an internal investigation of these very text messages. Now, interesting to many, the defense attorney, David Yannetti, did not reveal the messages to the jury while Jonathan was on the stand. However, in a surprise move, Special Assistant Hank Brennan, he did read each of those text messages, written in the group of texts to about 9 people. In those texts, Proctor revealed confidential information that he was not allowed to reveal, including sexual innuendo, terrible slurs against Karen Read, that he had hoped that she would even kill herself. Things a lead investigator should never be saying about the case. So Brennan, though, in a surprise move, he took the sting from the defense in going through those on his cross-examination, and he was able to stage them in a somewhat different light. Now, talking heads are not only talking about this, but they're kind of shaking their heads, somewhat puzzled why the defense did not have these read through this witness. It was this witness that they were using to put the texts into evidence. So why did they not have him read them, or have him be a part of the reading thereof? Now, Jonathan, he was a childhood friend of Proctor. He did state, though, on cross-examination, that Proctor never discussed framing Karen Read or planting evidence, by the way, which is what the defense is alluding to in their own case. Now, we know that in most trials, police officers are called to witness in behalf of the prosecution. But in another unusual move this week, the defense called on Monday to stand another witness. They called a former Canton Police Department officer, Officer Kelly Deaver. By the way, Kelly is now working with the Boston Police Department, having left the Canton Police Department. But during this event, she was employed with the Canton Police Department. And Kelly Deaver, she was scheduled to be on patrol the morning John O'Keefe was found in the snow. However, while everything that was going on, they reassigned her to dispatch as other officers responded to 34 Fairview Road. Now, Deaver was also questioned about security cameras inside the police department. But next, defense attorney Alan Jackson, he questioned Deaver about statements she made to an outside enforcement agent. We now know that that agent was an FBI agent. And she made that statement on August the 9th, 2023. You see, Deaver had said to that agent that she saw her chief of police and an ATF agent, Brian Higgins, go into the Sally Port together and was alone with Read's vehicle for, listen to this, quote, unquote, a wildly long time. Now remember, the defense now is alleging that that car was tampered with, that evidence was planted, and she said they were there for a wildly long time. However, surprisingly, Deaver told the jury now that she recanted her statement after she realized she had the timeline incorrect. It was not working when Read's vehicle arrived at the police department. What about that? Now, because she recanted her earlier statement, Jackson then pressed on the fact that she had been called, there in the Boston area and to where she's working now, she had been called to the commissioner's office to speak with the commissioner prior to her testimony. Now, you can tell where Jackson's going with this. You can tell where he's going by the way he questioned her, suggesting by his questions, suggesting that maybe, just maybe, the thin blue wall of silence, where police officers take care of each other on and off duty, may have been raised in that meeting with the commissioner. Now, upon cross-examination, though, Deaver told the jury, my entire job revolves around what I say on the stand right now. If I were to lie, I would lose my job. I'd lose everything. I'm here to tell the truth. Now, I got to tell you, I cannot see that the commissioner of the Boston Police Department would suggest to his officer anything nefarious. In fact, I admire a commissioner that realizes how tough it is to be placed on this trial, on national stage. He simply wanted to reassure his officer, to tell her to tell the truth, and that she had the support of her department. But some people won't see it the way I do. Some people will want to make this look suspicious. But the question is, what will the jury think about that? Now, we do know that the vehicle more than likely was brought to the Sallyport after she left. But did she see her chief and the ATF agent who was present at 34 Fairview the night that the defense is alleging that maybe a fight brought out that caused the injuries? Did she see them together somewhere in the Sallyport, whether the car was there or not? I don't know. You don't know. But she was called to the stand, and she did change her first testimony to the FBI. Well, next we're going to hear from another trial expert on Monday of last week, Dr. Marie Russell. She is the dog bite expert. You know the defense is alleging that the scratches, cuts on John O'Keefe's arm wasn't from an automobile, wasn't from him hitting the taillight with his arm, but rather it was from a dog, is what the defense is saying. And Dr. Russell, she is a forensic pathologist and a dog bite expert. She's a professor for the School of Medicine there in California. She's also a former police officer and, get this, an emergency room doctor who lives in Los Angeles. She's got plenty of experience to go around. And, you know, she's the type of witness, I got to tell you, that the jury can like. Almost a grandmother image that a lot of people can relate to. But don't let that image fool you. No, Mr. Brennan, you better not let it fool you. He found that out the hard way on cross-examination. She can hold her own with the very best of the best on the witness stand. Now, the only points I thought that Brennan really scored with her on cross-examination was to get her to admit that Leslie, the attorney, well, that he suggested that she ask for a transcript each time Leslie asked her about her previous testimony. You see, lawyers are not supposed to talk to their trial experts during trial. But I don't think this was a biggie, and I don't think that the jury would take anything much of that. But another example of the strength of the witness was when Brennan asked Dr. Russell if she had known that Karen Read had said it was her fault that he was dead, John O'Keefe, I mean. He asked her, if you knew that she said that, would you still believe that she was not hit by the vehicle? Her answer, yes, and she said, I'm going to tell you why. She said, as an emergency room doctor, I've witnessed many people throughout the years that would say things like this in shock. She said there's even a condition known as acute grief reaction. Acute grief reaction. Must be my fault the person's dead. Now, which that in a way can blow away Brennan's opening statement when he said, Read said, I hit him, or did I hit him? Now, the defense can now argue all those statements were, quote, unquote, acute grief reaction. Because Brennan opened up that door. Bet he wasn't ready for that answer. I'm sure he did not expect Dr. Russell to answer that question that way, for sure. When he asked her about O'Keefe's injuries, he said, you're not an accident reconstructionist, are you? She came right back, said, nope, but I've witnessed hundreds of injuries as an emergency room doctor that were a result of a vehicle accident impact, and that she did not see that to be the same result of John O'Keefe's injuries. She testified that she believes the injuries on O'Keefe's right arm came from a dog and not from the rear end of Read's vehicle. There was a dog in the house, a dog that they got rid of very quickly after this. Now, all in all, I believe that Dr. Russell became a very strong witness for the defense. The defense even used the questioning of Brennan to ask for a mistrial with prejudice. That's right, without the jury present during the break in Russell's testimony. Alessi accused Brennan, someone accused Brennan, of bringing up the topic of DNA when it should have not been allowed. He intentionally brought up DNA. Based on that intentional mention, the defense moved strongly, vigorously, for a mistrial with prejudice. A mistrial with prejudice. You see, that's happened recently in a high-publicized trial. You remember the Baldwin trial, right? In fact, the attorney said there's been no mention of this trial of the DNA with regard to what Mr. Brennan has raised. There's been none. Now, the judge considered the motion during the morning recess, and she ruled against it. But this witness, as good as she was not the bombshell witness I mentioned earlier. I'm going to share with you about that bombshell witness when we come right back. But first, it's time to take a quick break and share with you Charlie Crimebuster's Crazy Crook of the Week. Now, our crazy story today comes to us from Troy, Michigan. There, cops were conducting a traffic stop. It was around 5:15 a.m. in the morning. Police were parked on the long side of the road dealing with a driver when a 2017 Chevy Cruze pulled up behind the patrol car. Officers went to speak to that driver, and they found him asleep behind the wheel. And when they woke up the driver, there was a 27-year-old Pontiac, Michigan man. The officers noticed there was a strong odor of alcohol coming from the vehicle. After performing poorly on a series of field sobriety tests, the man then refused to take a preliminary breath test. He was arrested, taken to the Troy Police Department lockup. There he was read his right to a blood draw. He refused that as well, so they got a warrant for a blood draw. And, of course, he is arrested. Now, the moral of the story, first, don't drink and drive. Let me say that again. First, don't drink and drive. But if you do it, you're probably a little crazy if you decide to pull up behind a parked police car with blue lights flashing and then interfere with a police traffic stop. Even if unintentionally, my friend, you're going to get in trouble. So this, my friend, this person, who indeed pulled up behind the police, parked along the side of the road, and just as well said, "Come and get me, I'm driving drunk." This guy is indeed Charlie Crimebuster's Crazy Crook of the Week. Now back to our main focus and the bombshell witness that I did not expect. You see, when the police went to get Karen Read's vehicle the next day to take it into custody for testing, it's just common, my friend, when you enter another jurisdiction, you usually ask for that department to come along as a common courtesy and because of the authority that they have in the area. So Sergeant Nicholas Barros, who was a patrol officer in the 2022 time, he helped serve a search warrant on Read's vehicle from her parents' home. Now here's what the good sergeant said. He told the court that when they were going to serve that search warrant, he noticed the taillight of Karen Read's car and that it was cracked and missing a dollar-sized fragment from the taillight. But hold on to your hat now. When he, on the witness stand, was shown a photo of the vehicle inside the Canton Police Department Sally Port that they took, Barris said, that's quote, unquote, absolutely not the same condition he saw the taillight before the transport. He said, that is the vehicle, but that's not how I saw the taillight. Wow. Explosive, right? Never expected that. Another cop coming forward and said, hey, that taillight was not in that shape that it was in the Sally Port when I saw it before we took it into custody. Now remember, it's a big deal about the taillight. The defense is alleging that there was taillight pieces planted on the lawn, and here is a police officer from another jurisdiction who said the taillight did not look like it did in the Sally Port when he first saw it before the police took it into custody. When Brennan asked why he did not say this before now, he simply said, well, nobody really asked me about it. Wow. Police officer from another area has no dog in the fight, saying that in order for the taillight to look like it did in the Sally Port, well, the inference is someone or somebody tampered with that taillight or something happened to that taillight. Now this, to me, as far as an eyewitness goes, is huge. Now, if you've been following me, you will note that I say often that eyewitnesses are not the most reliable, but I think with this guy being a cop, it's maybe has a long way to go with this jury. What do you think? Well, then the defense calls Brian Loughran. They called Lucky, a.k.a. Lucky, to the stand. You might remember him. You see, he was a snowplow driver who testified that he never saw John O'Keefe's body in the front lawn of 34 Fairview Road on January the 29th, 2022. Lucky said he drove past 34 Fairview Road multiple times, lots of times, on the morning of January the 29th, 2022. And according to his testimony, his shift began around 2:30 a.m. He was assigned to clear roads near Route 3 there, 111 rather. And Lucky's first pass on Fairview Road was between 2:40 and 2:45 a.m. Then he returned 5 or 10 minutes later to clear the other half of the road. He said on both of those passes, he never saw John O'Keefe in the yard. Now, according to the prosecution, should have been there around 1-something in the morning, but nope, said never saw him. The second time he cleared the road was at 3:30 a.m., and guess what? Not only did he not see John O'Keefe, but there was a Ford Edge parked outside the front of the home. The next time, he came through at 6:15 a.m., but could not get through because police were now blocking the roadway. They had found his body. Now, it was also pointed out that his rig is called Franken. It's kind of like a Frankenstein, because it looked like a beast with plenty of large lights that lights up all around the vehicle, which would have been plenty of light to see into the yard if he was looking that way. Now, in the first trial, you remember that the prosecution had the people that came from that party there, that after party, from the bar that night on 34 Fairview, and these people, one after the other, said they did not see somebody on the lawn. They did not see somebody on the lawn. Now, those folks haven't been called in order like that this time, but keep in mind, it was snowing. They could have been focused on keeping their own footing as they were leaving the yard. But this, combined with the snowplow driver saying he did not see a body, I believe is a major point for the defense. Now, Brennan, he tried to rattle Lucky's cage, suggesting maybe the blogger Turtle Boy, you remember him from the last trial, not go back, listen to our last podcast when we covered the first trial. Well, Turtle Boy, he said, according to Brennan, was indicating that he may have put pressure on Lucky to testify this way. But I think that pretty well fell on deaf ears with the jury. I believe Lucky was a stronger witness in this trial than he was the first witness, or the first trial that he was a witness to. So, what do you think? The snowplow witness, is it going to make a difference, or will it not? Now, on Thursday, the court was dark, took a day off, and then on Friday, oh, by the way, before the Thursday, on Wednesday, there was one more witness. That was a lady who had been at the bar that night, had seen Karen and John together, said they looked like they were having a good time, couldn't see that they were upset at each other at all, and also pointed out that it seemed like Jennifer that night, that McCabe, that she really, really wanted John and them to come to the house. Again, the defense inferring that this was a setup to bring John to that house and beat him up. Well, that's what the defense is alleging anyhow. Now, Thursday, the court was dark. They took a day off. The judge said it was too hot. They have a bad air conditioner there, and it would just be too hard on the jury. So they took a day off because she said they were ahead of schedule anyhow. So now Friday, we've all been waiting to hear from him. Yep, he was a star witness in the first trial. Very lockable. Handsome for the lady. Crime junkies out there. And so he got the nickname Crash Daddy. Crash Daddy for his expertise. And he comes to the stand on Friday. He did not disappoint either. Daniel Wolf, a.k.a. Crash Daddy, has a Ph.D. in an accident reconstruction expert, works for ARCA Incorporated. Dr. Wolf testified that during Karen Read's first trial, but this time he conducted even additional testing for the retrial that backed up his findings that Read did not strike Boston police officer John O'Keefe on January the 29th, 2022. Now, unlike the prosecution's witness, Dr. Welcher, who only tested the SUV at 2 to 3 miles per hour, he said he could not continue to test it, because it would tear up the car. Well, Dr. Wolf, unlike Dr. Welcher, he used a crash dummy and a rescue Randy dummy along with a Lexus SUV like Reed's vehicle, and he tested not 2 to 3 miles per hour, but various speeds and the impacts to the vehicle's taillight. Several tests, many of them, in different ways and different technology was introduced into doing these tests. He was very impressive, I got to tell you. And he says the tests were inconclusive and did not match the damage that was sustained to Reed's vehicle that night. Now, I thought that he was the strongest witness in the first trial by far. And I believe he was a very strong witness this time. Now, Brennan did have a go at the expert, but he really did not land any real punches in his cross. In fact, Dr. Wolf may have even landed more points for the defense on the cross. That is the way he handled the intense cross from Brennan. The only thing I did pick up that might backfire is that jurors there seeing this dummy hit over and over and over and over again, kind of like that old commercial years ago with sports when they had the ski guy coming down the ski slope and he kept falling over and over again, and they played it over and over again till that was just implanted in your mind, that this may have implanted in the jury's mind that he could have been hit by the car, that he could have been injured that way. That is, if they did not pay attention to how Dr. Wolf pointed out that it was inconsistent. These tests said it was inconsistent with the theory of the prosecution that it could not have happened that way. But my friend, there's so many variables in calculating force and speed in this situation, it can be confusing. And confusion mostly leads to reasonable doubt. Well, my friend, it's not over yet. More to come from the defense, but it's getting closer. But remember, the prosecution will get to use rebuttal witnesses to the ARCA and experts that the defense has called to the stand. It will be interesting to see how Dr. Welcher handles Dr. Wolf's testimony. Then after that, the defense will rest. There will be, of course, jury instructions. And then in the next week or two, though, we could see this get to the jury. There's still some questions, though. What impact will these experts have on the jury? It will not be the experts who make the decision. It'll be how the jury feels about those experts that will cause the jurors to make their decision. And then, will the defense call Proctor? Now, they're asking the judge to allow them for a motion called missing witness. There, they could argue that the lead investigator of the prosecution messed up the case so much that the prosecution did not even call him to the trial. I think the judge should allow him to argue that, but we'll see. Why did both sides fail to call Proctor? The defense still could do so, but somehow I doubt they will. Maybe they wanted just to leave more doubt in the mind of the juries as him being the boogeyman. Well, rest assured, the defense will still have some moments up their sleeve. There have been several moments from both sides where we've seen a real difference in the way they're handling this trial from the first one. Ways they each think will make their case stronger, but does it? Let me ask you. The prosecutor has a stronger case this time, but is it enough for a guilty verdict? The defense isn't stronger, in my opinion, but is it enough for a not guilty verdict? Or will it just be another hung jury? What do you think? Reach out to me, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Well, don't forget to join with us next week as we'll bring you another episode and we'll get you caught up on what happens during this week of trial at what some people have called the retrial of the century. Join me next week, won't you? Until this time next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster reminding you, be safe, be alert. For the life you save, it may be your very own.
You have been listening to Charlie Crimebuster. You can find additional information and podcasts at charliecrimebuster.com. We would like to thank our sponsor, the Peacemaker Network, and also encourage you to support the first responders, military, and law enforcement personnel by contributing to the Peacemaker Network. That's peacemakernetwork.com. All music and sound effects are courtesy of Pixabay.com. That's Pixabay.com. You can also support us by subscribing to our YouTube channel, tag @CharlieCrimeBuster, and then click the subscribe button. By doing so, you'll be notified each time we drop one of our shows. Another more convenient way to listen to our podcasts are to say to your smart speaker, play Charlie Crime Buster. If you have comments or suggestions, we would love to hear from you. So please send them to charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Or you can call or text us at 407-917-2211. That's 407-917-2211. Thank you for listening. We hope that you will join us again for another exciting crime episode with Charlie Crime Buster.